Hello, good morning, everyone. And I thank all of you for registering for my webinar on the top 5 compliance requirements for RIAs. Hope you all are doing well and safe. Hope your family members are safe in this COVID situation. I thought of taking this webinar for the simple reason that I have been talking to a lot of investment advisors in the past, especially after the new guidelines and the new amendments have been introduced. And there is still an uncertainty in the minds of the RIs. So my only aim will be to help you all understand some of these critical issues in the compliance. I know that regulations are really tricky, and what we should try and do is to best understand these regulations and compliance so that they fit in your investment advisory practice. So these are the topics covered in the presentation. We will go through the topics in detail. One of the most important topics is the client onboarding and servicing process, where a lot of records are maintained or required to be maintained. Also, there are certain processes to be followed in this client onboarding process, which we will cover. The next is the agreement. There are a lot of discussions on the agreement, the clauses, what all should be included, etc. Then there are disclosure which are required to be given to the clients. So we will cover that. Yes, maintenance of records, and the last part is audit. So if any one of you have questions, you can just post it in the Q&A section, and I'll be taking it maybe after a few slides, and obviously at the end of the webinar too. If you are not audible, please do. If I'm not audible, please do let me know in the Q&A section, and uh, I will try and fit the setting. Okay, so let's start with the first topic, that is client onboarding and servicing process. Okay, this is a typical RIA practice which usually all RIAs follow. They first a prospect gets in touch with them either through a website or through a referral, or say a word of mouth if the services are advertised. So once the discussion with the prospect happens, prospects thinks that okay, these are the services which I want to have, and then they are they decide to take on your services. You collect some information about the client so that you can service them, you can advise them, have discussions with the client, and once that is done, you deliver the investment advice either through a report or a document, or orally, or through an email. And the client agrees to your advice and executes this. So this is a typical RIA practice. So do you think something is missing in this RIA practice? Is any step going wrong, or anything which is missing? So what I will do is, we'll start a simple poll, and you can just answer. What do you think, if this is a RIA practice, or is anything missing in the practice? I would request you to vote so that I will also have an idea of what you are thinking about this practice. Okay, I haven't got much votes. I would request you all to please vote. Okay. Okay, I've got some votes, and most of them are saying that yes, it is a compliant RIA practice. 1/4 of them are saying no, and 3/4 are saying yes. So, okay, fine. I'll just close this poll. Okay, so this is not a fully compliant RIA practice. Okay, so what all things are missing? So when when I introduced this, when I started this webinar, I told you that there are certain processes which are required to be followed when you onboard your client. First and foremost, obviously, you will have a conversation with the client. As per the recent SEBI guidelines, this conversation has to be recorded. This initial conversation where any advisory related conversation is happening, that has to be recorded. Either if you're having it through a telephone or an email or a SMS or any other mode, that has to be recorded. So yes, conversation with client happens, but that has to be recorded. Once the client agrees to take your services, you sign the agreement with the client. This agreement signing is again mandatory as per the new regulations. So before giving the advice, you get the agreement signed. In the agreement, you also mention about fees, and fees is taken only after the agreement is signed. Once the client is onboarded, you do the KYC you get the KYC documents of the client and then keep it on your records. Once the agreement is done, KYC, then risk profiling is what you should do before giving any investment advice. Make sure that this profile is communicated to the client. Once the risk profiling questionnaire is taken by the client submits the risk profiling questionnaire and the risk profile is arrived at. Of course, you will be having discussions with the client, and after discussions and the risk profiling questionnaire score, you arrive at the risk profile that has to be communicated to the client. Once the communication is done, the client has to give his or her consent on the risk profile, which again has to be recorded. So that can be either through an email, which is registered with you in your records, or through a physical document. So that recording also has to be done. Once all these, three steps, that is agreement, KYC, and risk profile is done, only then you go to providing investment advice. So you will assess the suitability of the product according to client's risk profile and the time horizon for which the client want to invest, and then provide the investment advice to the client. After that, if you are providing implementation service, the client goes to the implementation stage. If not, then obviously the client can do it from any other intermediary too. So yes, this is a compliant RIA practice. In the earlier slide, a few of the steps like KYC, risk profiling, all those steps were missing. So yes, we come to the second topic of our webinar today, which is agreement, which again is a part of the client onboarding process. Now, this agreement earlier in 2013 regulations was not mandatory. I'm sure few of the existing RIAs did have agreement, but they had their own format. So now, as per the new guidelines, SEBI has given clauses which are mandatorily to be inserted in the agreement. Of course, you can have more clauses as per your business practice, but there are the clauses which are mentioned in the guidelines have to be there in the agreement. As I said before, agreement has to be signed before the fees is taken and the advice is given. A signed copy of the agreement has to be provided to the client. SEBI has not given much guidance about how the agreement needs to be signed. In the market, there are several online providers who provide a facility for signing the agreement online. It can be through a Aadhaar based OTP, Aadhaar based signing, or any electronic signature. This agreement signing, agreement keeping on records, this compliance has become effective from 1st of April 2021. So as on 31st March, the active clients which you have, all those clients need to have the new format of agreement in place, and also you will have to get the agreement signed. In the guidelines, SEBI has mentioned that the report about this compliance has to be done by June 30th, 2021. Although there is no clarity about how this reporting has to be done, but still, as a compliance, we'll have to be ready with the new clients, and as well as the existing clients to get the agreement signed. Yes, in the agreement, we also have to mention the fees which we are going to charge. That is one of the clauses which is important, which is mentioned in the guidelines as well. So, as per the new guidelines, SEBI has given only two modes through which the fees can be charged. One is the fixed fee mode, and the other is the AUA mode, which is which where a investment advisor can charge a percentage of AUA, that is assets under advice. Yes, there are limits on fees which are mentioned in the guidelines. For the fixed fee mode, you can charge 1.25 lakhs per annum per client. And for AUA mode, you can charge 2.5% per annum per client. Please remember that this limit is applicable across all services which you provide as an investment advisor. So even if you are providing any consultancy service, or even if you are providing any other say estate management service, or any will drafting service, all in my view, all those services, these limits are applicable. Also, SEBI has said that the fees can be taken only 2 quarters in advance. So if you are charging, say, a yearly fee, you can take only 6 months fees in advance. If at all you want to change, suppose if a client has taken a fixed fee mode in first year and then wants to change the mode to AUA, then that can be done only after the completion of 1 year of service. In the agreement, we also have to mention the terms of billing, that is, whether the fees is going to be taken in advance, or how is the fee going to be calculated, whether it is monthly, quarterly, half yearly. If you are charging on AUA basis, how is the AUA going to be arrived at? As well as in if you are charging through AUA, you also have to keep documents as basis. Suppose if the AUA which the client wants to invest is 25 lakhs, that 25 lakhs also has to be backed up with the supporting documents, like if they have bank statements, or if they have already in existing investments. So statements which support that 25 lakhs amount also needs to be kept on record. Also, in case of AUA, you have to illustrate on how the fees is going to be arrived, and what is the frequency of billing. So, depending on your practice, you will have to mention the terms in the agreement. Again, one more clause in the agreement is qualification and certification requirements of the principal officer in case of non-individuals, and in case of, and as well as the persons associated with investment advice. So in the agreement, we have to confirm that we will be ensuring that our principal officer and the PAA are qualifying, and also have the certification which is required under SEBI regulations. Thankfully, SEBI has given this leeway, for the existing investment advisors. That is, they have 3 years time to fulfill the qualification requirements. I'm sure all of you know that the enhanced qualification requirements for an existing individual investment advisor as well as the principal officer is post graduation plus 5 years of experience plus the NISM certification. And for persons associated with investment advice, the experience requirement has been reduced to 2 years. So all your existing investment advisors in the organization have to fulfill this qualification requirements within 3 years time. But the certification requirement, that is the NISM certification, has to be fulfilled immediately. So there is a notification on NISM's website that the existing certifications are valid up to 30th June. But in case if you in your city have the centers which are open, I would request that you suggest that you go and give the exam or apply online, but have the certification valid at all times. There is a certain category of investment advisors which are more than 50 years of age as on 30th September. They do not need to fulfill the qualification and certification requirements. Sorry, the qualification requirements. Certification requirements still have to be fulfilled. So this we have to confirm in the agreement. So when you confirm, you should make sure that this qualification and certification requirements are fulfilled by your organization. Again, one more clause is ensuring fulfillment of net worth requirements. These net worth requirements have been enhanced by SEBI, and again, for the non-individuals, that is partnership firms, private companies, and LLPs, the net worth has been increased to 50 lakhs, and for individuals, the net worth has been increased to 5 lakhs. So the existing investment advisors again have time to fulfill this requirement, that is SEBI has given 3 years time. But all those people who are planning to apply new, they have to fulfill this requirement before making an application to SEBI. So including the qualification and certification requirements as well as the net worth requirements have to be fulfilled when you are making the new application. Okay. I'm sure some of you also provide implementation service to your clients. So there is no definite definition about what implementation service is, but what I understand is when you are facilitating, the implementation for your clients, that is allowed only if you are not charging fees, and as well as you are not getting any fees for that implementation service. In the agreement, all the investment advisors have to undertake and confirm that they will not be taking any POA or not taking any authorization for implementation service. So this clearly means that you cannot manage like a portfolio manager does. You cannot do place trades in your client's account without any knowledge of that client, or neither can you take a POA and do the trading for that, do the trading or the investment for that client. You cannot do something with what a portfolio management manager does. If, as an RIA, your role is only to advise and then help implementation in direct plans where you are not getting any commissions or not getting any other fees. If at all you are helping them with the implementation, please take prior consent, prior permission, and that too in writing from the client, so that the client is aware of what exactly is being done, for his investments. So yes, implementation cannot be done if you are charging any. I mean, sorry, you cannot charge fees for implementation service. Okay, and we come to the next section, that is disclosures. These are very, very important in RIA practice. As you know, SEBI is the watchdog of securities market, and it always ensures that the interest of the investors are protected, and that's why a lot of importance is given on the disclosure requirement under the investment advisors regulation. um, the existing regulations also have certain disclosure requirements, and the new guidelines have also added the disclosure requirements for RIAs. So now this is what is required under the RIA regulations. Whenever you are providing services, the client should be aware of certain things about you, so that the client can take informed decisions when he or she is taking your services. So the disclosures are about the investment advisor, about the business activities of the investment advisor. In case if you are a non-individual, you can also mention about your directors, about your partners, about your past history, what were you into, anything about your products, your business activities. If you are recommending any service of the intermediary, that also has to be disclosed, so that if there are any conflict of interest, that the client will know. In case if you are an associate of an intermediary, even that has to be disclosed to client. This disclosure can happen either on the website or in the agreement. that is under the conflict of interest section. Also, SEBI has required you to disclose about the holding position in the products or securities which you are advising to your client, so that the client also knows that you are also holding the same security which has been advised to the client. Then certain products are very risky, and you should make the client aware about the warnings and the disclaimer in the advertisement material of those products. Also, the performance track record of those products have to be disclosed to the client. Then in 2019 December, there was a circular which was issued by SEBI for measures for conduct of investment advisors. There, SEBI made mandatory that the details about the complaints on the website have to be details about the complaint have to be displayed on the website. Now you have to display it on the home page, and that cannot be with scrolling, so that has to be on the top of your home page. That also the table has to be updated as and when you get complaints. So how will you update that table? You will have to ensure that you are registered with Scores platform, that is SCORES platform of SEBI, where clients can go and complain against you. So once you are registered with Scores, you will have the details of complaints, if any, on against you, and then accordingly you can update on the uh, on in the complaints table. And the new guidelines have given certain disclosures which have to be there on the website, as well as in various client communication agreements, KYC forms, or any other advertisement material which you are giving to your client. So this disclosures include about the investment advisor, about the registration details, and about the principal officer, and the contact details of the principal officer. So all these details have to be mentioned on the website, as well as the various client communication. Okay, so before I go to my next section, I will just see if there are any questions. Okay. Okay, someone has asked me whether RIA includes derivative advisory. So yes, RIA practice includes all the kinds of securities, and securities include derivatives. So RIA practice includes derivative advisory as well. Someone has asked me about difference of between RIAs and RAs. Okay, I'll just cover a few points. RIAs In RIA you provide personalized services, whereas in research analyst you just provide stock or mutual fund or any other security recommendations through a research report. Okay. If client is KYC compliant, then also do we need to take address proof and ID proof, or KYC acknowledgement is sufficient? First of all, you will have to ensure that you are registered with the CKYC portal. There, you can get access to client documents if the client is also a CKYC compliant client. So usually, if the client has Demat account or has invested in mutual funds, the client is a CKYC client, because all SEBI registered intermediaries, all RBI registered intermediaries, all IRDA registered intermediaries, and PFRDA registered intermediaries have to be registered under CKYC with the CKYC registry. But having said that, you will still have to take the ID proof and address proof of the client if the client is not CKYC compliant. If the client is CKYC compliant, then you can always download it from the CKYC registry. Okay. Please specify which circular or clause in the regulation states about recording of conversation. So this is mentioned in the recent guidelines by SEBI about recording of initial conversation about investment advice with the client or the prospect. Okay. What does SEBI what seriously does SEBI take the communication recording rules? What are the penalties? Um, See, all compliance is compulsory and has to be taken seriously. If there are any complaints against you, SEBI is definitely going to penalize you. So recording of communication also is a part of compliance which has to be taken seriously. Okay, who can sign the risk questionnaire? RM, Investment Advisory Department, or only the authorized signatory. The risk questionnaire has to be signed by the client. In SEBI regulations, there is no mention of signing of risk questionnaire by the investment advisor. Okay, I think I'll take few questions later and I will continue with my presentation. Yes, we come to our the next section, that is maintenance of records, which is a basic step when you are going for audit. So when we saw the client onboarding process, there we also saw that there are a lot of records to be maintained as the client is onboarded. So these are the main records which you'll have to keep. It has to be kept either it has to be kept for audit, as well as if there is inspection from SEBI, then SEBI also asks for these records. So yes, KYC records have to be kept. As I told you, if you are say CKYC registered, if you have registered yourself on CKYC registry, then you can download the records from the CKYC registry. If at all your client is not a CKYC compliant client, then it is your responsibility to upload the records on the CKYC portal. Also, if there is an updation in the client documents and client has informed you, that also has to be done by you. You are responsible for updating the records on the CKYC portal as well. Next is risk profiling questionnaire and as well as the consent of the client. So here there are three things which have to be taken care of. One is you have to keep on record the risk profiling questionnaire which the client has filled. Make sure that all the questions in the questionnaire are filled. If the questionnaire is not fill completely, please ask the client to complete the questionnaire. Uh, in one of the cases which was against a registered investment advisor, SEBI had passed an order. In that order, SEBI had clearly mentioned that the risk profiling questionnaire should be fully filled so that the investment advisor can arrive at the risk profile in a compliant way. Once the risk profiling questionnaire is filled, consent has to be taken, and before that, the communication of the risk profile has to happen. All these things have to be in writing. Once the risk profile is done, as I told you, suitability assessment has to take place. So you will have to keep records on how did you assess the suitability of the product for that client. Then copies of agreement, of course, which have to be signed by both parties. And then investment advisory report or the financial plan or any other document which you provide to the client for providing investment advice. Also, if you can add a few disclosures in the report, even for example about the products, even that will help you comply with the disclosure requirements. So yes, that report has to be kept on records. SEBI has currently not mentioned whether the report has to be signed, but whatever investment advice you give, even through the email, that also has to be kept on record. Once you have given the investment advice, you'll have to keep on record the rationale for arriving at that investment advice. And yes, this rationale has to be signed and dated by the investment advisor. So this signed rationales have to be kept on record. And there is a register of clients. that also has to be kept. This register has to be updated on periodic basis. So as and when the client is onboarded, you'll have to update the register. And there are certain fields which have to be mentioned in the register, which are there mentioned in the regulation 19 of IE regulations. So this register also has to be updated. This can be kept either in an Excel format, or if you have CRMs or any other software which you're using for client record maintenance, that can be kept as a register. So as I mentioned at the start of my webinar, you'll have to keep records from the first interaction with the prospect or the client if the interaction is about investment advice. So even if the client is telling you that I have this many stocks, or this is my portfolio, and if you also give a general view on that portfolio, I would advise that you start recording those conversations or interaction. So the best way to record those are is through email or through a physical document. So if you have I have a telephonic conversation, you can have minutes of that meeting and keep that as records. So there are these are the four five modes through which communication usually happens. That is either through a physical record, or through a telephonic conversation, or emails, or SMS, or any other mode which is legally verifiable. So all these modes of conversation, if you have, you will have to keep records of all these modes, and all the records have to be maintained for 5 years. Yes, so once you have followed all the processes which are there in your organization or in your RIA practice, then you are ready for audit. So audit does not only mean audit about record keeping, but it also means audit about the internal processes which are required to be followed. For example, SEBI has said that advice can be given only after the risk profiling is done. So that is a process which you have to follow. If you don't follow, obviously it is a non-compliance. So audit also means audit of processes as well as audit of documents. Now documents also are can be divided into two types. One is client related documents, and the other is the documents which are your internal processes. So you will have to keep all those documents on record so that the auditor can check those records. And the recent requirement which is added by SEBI is that if you are into providing distribution services, then you also have to take a certificate from an auditor in case of an individual, or from a statutory auditor in case of a non-individual, and that certificate has to be taken annually, and that certificate also is a part of the compliance audit. So whoever is doing your compliance audit, you will have to submit that certificate to that auditor. Now, I will just touch base upon a few points in the client level segregation. So in case if you are, like I told, in the distribution services, you will have to segregate your clients. By that, I mean a single client cannot be opting for both advisory as well as distribution services. If a client is an advisory client, you cannot provide distribution services to that client. If a client is a distribution services client, you cannot provide advisory services to that client. Individuals cannot provide both services. If a family member of an individual is providing distribution services, then again the client level segregation requirements apply to you. And as an individual, you can service only advisory client. For non-individuals, you can provide both services under one roof, but yes, you will have to take care of the segregation of these clients. um, Before for this so this client level segregation is applicable from 1st of April. Before that, if you have existing clients, from 1st of April, you will have to make sure that they do not take both the services from you. Of course, you cannot force them to liquidate the assets, but if they are continuing with the distribution services, they can continue with the distribution services. And then once they have decided to take on your advisory services, then you cannot provide them distribution services. For new clients who are getting onboarded, for them, you will have to provide option, either they want to go for advisory services or they want to go for distribution services. So this client level segregation is very important. I'm sure you guys are um, facing some issues, especially for those who are into investment advisory practice since a very long time. But ultimately, the client, and as well as you have to decide how you will be servicing the client. So this even the audit requirements for taking a certificate from the auditor has become applicable from 1st of April. So for the financial year 2021, the segregation of client audit also has to be done. Yes, audit has to be completed within 6 months of the financial year. That is before 30th of September of 2021. You will have to get the audit completed. If there are any adverse remarks in the audit report, we will have to submit that to SEBI along with the action which is taken by the management. That report has to be submitted to the respective SEBI office. I assume that respective SEBI offices means the local or the regional offices which are there in which are near to your place of business. And this submission has to be done not later than 31st of October. So if you complete your audit maybe by July, so by August, you will have to submit this report along with the action taken by the management. So yes, as I always say, the cost of non-compliance is much higher than the cost of compliance. So I would request you all to follow the regulations in spirit. With this, I finish my presentation. There are few things which I want to announce. One is about my services. So I also, since I am a company secretary in practice, I also am eligible to conduct the audits and issue compliance certificates. Also, I am engaged. You can engage me for helping you with one-time setup of compliance services or ongoing consultancy and support for compliance services. If you have any inquiries, you can mail me at kruti@cskruti.com. And here is one announcement. So I am coming up with a package for startups, especially for those who are just starting up with their practice or are still unsure about the compliance. So this is a package where the compliance which are required under the regulations are covered. Also, I will be giving a ready-to-use draft investment advisory agreement, as well as there are other benefits and bonuses which you can have a look on my website, which is cskruti.com. So if you have any inquiries, you can send the email to me. Okay. So with this, I finish my webinar, and I will just quickly take the questions. Okay, someone has asked, can I have an individual RIA license and also act as a principal officer with the company? No, SEBI will not allow you to do that either, because principal officer is one of the employees is one of the employees of the company, and if you are acting as a principal officer, you are responsible for the entire investment advisory division. In fact, the definition of principal officer also states that you are someone like a managing director or a chairman or a CEO of that company. So no, you cannot practice individually as well as be the principal officer of that company. um, how can I get risk profiling after the agreement done? If the agreement we put across services of mutual fund advisory, after risk profiling and knowing asset allocation, the client decides to take investment equity advisory. So yes, what I had mentioned as a process is typically what other investment advisors also do. But you can do the risk profiling before the agreement. That is totally allowed. You can also mention about the risk profile of the client in the agreement, but you will have to make sure that you are given advice only after agreement, risk profile, and KYC is done. You can interchange the steps for these three requirements. So you can do risk profiling before the agreement. Does the RIA have to get agreements signed by all clients before submission on 30th June? Yes, all existing clients whose services are ongoing, that as on 31st March, have to get the new agreement signed, and the report has to be submitted by 30th June. Can a single agreement signed by only head of the family uh, be okay covering all family members, or all the family members must mandatorily sign the individual agreement? So if you are providing services to the entire family, and suppose if this is a family of a husband, wife, and children, and if the wife or the husband also has their own assets, then I would advise you to get it signed by both the husband and the wife. But if the husband is the head of the family, the wife is only um, like a homemaker, or vice versa, if a wife is the head of the family and there are not much assets to be included in from the husband side, then yes, either one of them can sign the agreement. You can mention in the agreement that the family members are also included in the definition of that client. Okay, someone has requested me to repeat the fee details. So, in the guidelines, SEBI has mentioned only two modes of fee collection. That is, you can, sorry, charging fees. You can either charge um, through a AUA mode or through a fixed fee mode. The AUA mode, the limit is 2.5% per client per annum across all services provided by the investment advisor. Under fixed fee mode, it is two and a half, sorry, one and a half lakh per client per annum across all services. So fees can be charged only 6 months in advance if you are charging a yearly fee. If you are charging quarterly fee, then you can charge the quarter in advance. I hope I have covered your query. Okay, are referral fee on third party products endorsement included or part of advisory fee limit? Um, this is a tricky question. Okay, so in my view, I will always take a conservative view of the regulations which SEBI has asked us to follow. So if it is a referral fee, if you are getting a referral fee, then it is obviously an issue, because you will be also I'm not sure whether you are also helping with implementation service, but you are getting a referral fee just for referring to the client to a third party. Then we will have to see the arrangement first before I can comment on that referral fee. Okay, what about the sales and telemarketing team members? I assume this is related to qualification and certification requirements. So if they are acting as say RMs or client servicing employees, then they will have to fulfill the qualification and certification requirements. But if they are just acting, say like if there are any technical issues and they are helping solve those issues, then they need not fulfill the requirements. But if they are sales persons, they have to fulfill the qualification and certification requirements. I will, since I have got more questions on this persons associated with investment advice, I will just read out the definition. The persons associated with investment advice shall mean any member, partner, officer, director, or employee, or any sales staff of such investment advisor, including any person occupying a similar status and performing a similar function. So yes, sales staff is included, and of course there is an explanation given by SEBI that all client-facing persons, such as sales staff, say, service relationship managers, client relationship managers, have to fulfill the qualification and certification requirements. These persons do not include any clerical or office administrative staff. So yes, sales staff is included in this PAA and has to fulfill the qualification and certification requirement. So currently, as I told you, existing investment advisors have 3 years. So if your sales staff does not have a post graduation but has only graduation and 2 years of experience, you will have to request that staff to fulfill the qualification requirement of post graduation. So I would also want to inform here that recently there was a notification by SEBI where NISM's 1 year program for securities market will be eligible for fulfilling the qualification requirement. So you can request your sales staff maybe to enroll for that program so that the post graduation requirement is fulfilled. But yes, you will have 3 years if you are an existing investment advisor. If you are planning to apply, then you do not have this 3 years time. Certification requirements, as I said, has to be fulfilled immediately. In case of a company, do all the directors require to fulfill the qualification? So no, if there has to be at least one person who will be designated as the principal officer who has to fulfill the qualification requirements. If your directors are involved in advisory services, then yes, they have to fulfill the qualification requirements. But if they are not involved in advisory services, they need not fulfill the qualification requirements, qualification and certification requirements. If one client is under AUA mode, then how can the client be charged for other services like tax planning, estate planning, etc.? Yes, you are correct that you will have to maybe include all those services also under that mode and then charge a one comprehensive fee, and of course you can charge it on percentage basis. Or one more option is, I would suggest you can maybe have one more say firm or a company where you will be providing only tax planning or estate planning services, and then in that company you can maybe charge another mode. But if it is again advisory services, then you will have to get registered with SEBI, so you will have to figure that out accordingly. Please elaborate on the applicability of holding position disclosure in case of non-individual entities. Okay, so in case of non-individual entities, if at all they have invested in, say, liquid mutual funds, or have they parked their money in any, have they parked their surplus money in any product or any security, and if that is a part of your advice to the client, then accordingly you will have to disclose that the company also has a holding in that product or security. The company or the partnership firm or the LLP has a holding in that security. I am a stock trade provider. Can I trade in client account with written consent from the client? You cannot place trades in client account is what I understand when SEBI says that you cannot have POAs or authorizations. So in my view, you cannot place place trades yourself by logging into clients' accounts. What about sales and marketing team members, NISM certification? I think I have covered that. Can you please confirm the educational qualification for PAA? So that is post graduation plus 2 years of experience. That experience has to be in advisory activities related to advisory or fund management or portfolio management services. It can be, in my view, it also can be activities related to mutual fund distribution and stock broker services as well. And the PAs also fulfill the certification requirements by completing the NISM series 10A, 10B, that is level 1, level 2 for investment advisors. What if a query has raised but not complaint? Should that be updated on the website? In my view, if it's just a query and it is maybe a service related complaint like this is not accessible or they are not getting reports or something like that, then I don't think that should be a complaint. In my view, a complaint table should be updated when there is a complaint on the scores platform. That is my view. If it is an internal complaint and it is service related complaint, then it might not, I'm sorry, it need not be on the complaints table. Can I have an individual RIA license and also be the principal officer? I think I've covered that. What documents should be taken as KYC for non-individuals? I am not very sure of KYC for non-individuals, but what I remember is you will have to get MOA, AOA in case of companies, LLP agreement in case of partnership firms, sorry, LLPs and partnership agreement in case of partnership firms, as well as you will have to do the KYC of the person who is authorized by the non-individual to do the transactions. Is it mandatory for RIAs to register with CKYC to upload the CKYC details? Yes, there have been circulars by SEBI in 2016 where SEBI has asked investment advisors also to get registered with CKYC. Also, if you go on CKYC registry, there is an option where you have to select the investment advisor and complete the formalities for registration. What is the difference between CKYC and KRA? I think the only difference between CKYC and KRA, no, sorry, there are two differences. One is CKYC is established by CERCAI, CERCAI, and it is a depository of records of KYC of all clients across all financial intermediaries, that is intermediaries with intermediaries registered with RBI, SEBI, IRDA, and PFRDA. I think KRAs are only related to securities market, if I'm not wrong. Also, for KRA, I think in-person verification is done by KRA but not by CKYC. So what I can understand is CKYC is only for registering the details of client on a portal. But I think KRAs do the CKYC and they also have to upload the CKYC documents on the CKYC registry. I hope I have solved this query. As you mentioned, AUA of fixed fee is applicable for all services by RIA. If I am a CA in practice providing accounting consultancy services and investment advisory services, then my fee of 1.25 lakhs per annum applicable for both services, that is accounting as well as IA. If that accounting consultancy, I will assume that it is about consultancy related to accounts. I'm not sure if if you are an RIA, whether you can continue doing the CA practice. If you are still doing it, then my view will still be that across all services you can charge only 1.25 lakhs to the client. Risk profile will be done before agreement or after agreement. You can do either. but before giving advice. Um, can an IA enter into referral agreement of clients with PMS house? And for that, can IA charge referral fee if he's referring to, even if you are charging referral fee, but you'll have to still comply with the limits. Receiving fee through any payment gateway channel is also prohibited. Is that true? Yes, in my view, that is not allowed. SEBI has given modes for receiving payments. That is either through a direct bank transfer or IMPS, UPI, RTGS, NEFT, or by demand draft or check. So, in my view, payment gateway channel is not allowed. SEBI had prohibited this just because there was no traceability of funds, or there was no audit trail. There are two views in the market about this payment gateway channel, but in my view, you should not be taking fees from payment gateway. Can a non-RIA, non-PMS individual provide implementation support? Is there a cap on implementation support fee? You cannot charge for implementation support. So obviously the cap will not be applicable. But you can provide implementation service, sorry. You can provide implementation service to your clients. What are the licensing for providing recommendation in other country other than India? I am not very sure of that. The fee cap is per client, or it includes client family also? So it is, if the family of the client is dependent or that on that client, then this all the family members become one client. So fee cap is per client, per annum. If the family members are not dependent and you are having different agreement for different services from those family members, then you can consider them as different clients. But if there is dependency on the main client, then they are included as one client. Do you have to monitor clients or not SEBI debarred? I'm not sure under what regulations are you asking this. Do you have to monitor clients which are not SEBI debarred? I am not sure. Can RIA give advice on securities outside Indian boundaries? Yes. Because in securities definition, there is no mention that it has to be only Indian securities. Do we have to submit a quarterly report on SEBI's portal? In my view, since there is no mention of the same in the guidelines or in the regulations, it is not compulsory. But as a good compliance practice, you can submit the quarterly report to SEBI. I have asked, sorry, can RIA charge 1.5 lakhs for each person in the same family client? I have answered that. Um, since fee is 1.25 lakhs per annum, does it mean we can take only 10,000 roughly per month? What if I charge 75K for 6 months? Yeah, so if your fee limit is 1.25, and yes, so monthly fee, yeah, whatever will come to say 10K, and you can charge whatever fees is applicable for 6 months, you can charge that in advance. I am into financial education where I tell many clients the basis of investing without any fees, like buying index stocks, having term insurance. Do I have to maintain the recorded version of? No, I'm not able to understand your question about financial education. Is it okay only if the head of the family paying the fee, or all individuals in the family must pay the fee? Again, if the agreement is only with the client has to pay the fee. But if the agreement is with all the family members, then and of course the family members are not dependent on that client, you have different agreements with for different services for that family member, then that will be treated as a separate client, and the family member has to pay the advisory fees to you. 5 years of experience for principal officer for a corporate advisor is compulsory. um, Professional experience should be necessary. Salaried person, no, not required. If that principal officer was a mutual fund distributor for the past 5 years, or was into stockbroking and had advised clients during that business, even that is allowed. So, any experience in activities related to advisory, or like I said, fund management or portfolio management or securities, that experience is allowed for fulfilling the 5 years experience criteria. Is there any process for existing non-individual IA to intimate uh, principal officer details to SEBI? As in old regulation, there is a requirement of reporting representative of IA. PO requirement is introduced in new regulations. So there is no process where you can inform to SEBI. What best you can do is write a letter to SEBI along with the resolution if you have passed for appointment of um, power principal officer, and submit it to the nearest regional or the local office, which is near to your place of business, and you can mention the same in that letter, that this is a first principal officer was appointed, and along with the details of the qualification and certification. Also, when you are getting the audit done, I'm sure the auditor will also check and accordingly mention in the audit report about the compliance of the principal officer. If we teach, do we need to get into agreement? If it is only about educational purpose, if it is only for educational purpose, then it is not considered as investment advisory services, and so you need not get into an agreement. On a safer side, you can have your terms and conditions when you're providing such services. Can a non-RIA provide implementation support? Is there a cap? I think I covered that. So yes, implementation can services can be provided. You cannot charge fees. When okay, so just one point which I missed while talking about the agreement is that all individuals, when they are drafting the agreement, they also have to mention about obligor for for them. This is applicable only in case of death or disability of the individual investment advisor. So in the agreement, there is a section where you have to mention the obligor details. Obligor can be anyone who is your legal heir, or who is your executor or a trustee or a administrator of estate, that can become the obligor, and the details about the obligor, the contact details, have to be mentioned in the agreement, and this is applicable only for individuals. Okay, next question. I'm working as a sub broker since 2016, and I want to give intraday buy sell suggestions to my clients. What should I do? So, in case if you want to give intraday advisory services to your clients, and I assume you are not registered with SEBI, you will have to get registered with SEBI as investment advisor to give investment advisory services. Um, Make sure that you fulfill the qualification and certification requirements. If you are a sub broker since 2016, and if you have fulfilled 5 years of experience in 2021, you can apply to SEBI. But yes, you will have to fulfill the qualification certification requirements. Even distance MBA is fine. SEBI is accepting distance courses if they are 2 years courses. Fees of INR 1.25 lakhs and maximum of 2.5% AUA. Is this lower or both? You can charge in either of the mode. You cannot choose both the modes of charging fee. So if you are choosing fixed fee mode, the limit is 1.25 lakhs, and if you are charging AUA mode, it is 2.5. It's not lower of the both. It is either of the both. Can risk profiling be done post payment? Yes, it can be done post payment, but before giving investment advice. Is it necessary to do risk profiling for non-individuals? Yes, it is necessary to do risk profiling. This was again introduced in the guidelines which were issued by SEBI, that you will have to do the risk profiling of non-individual clients. In risk profiling for non-individual clients, those non-individuals need to have a process and a policy for risk management, and as per that investment policy which is approved by the board of non-individual, uh, according to that, the risk profiling and the suitability assessment has to be done. In case if there is no investment policy for that investment advisor, then you have the discretion to onboard that client or not. Does an individual RIA also need to have principal officer? No. But they can have PAAs, and again, they have to fulfill the qualification certification requirements. If we have husband and wife both financially independent, then can we keep husband on distribution and wife on advisory services? If they are financially independent, then yes, you can do that. But you will have to follow the compliances accordingly. Can a lawyer hold RIA? Can a lawyer give RIA services? I assume. I am not sure whether. So yes, lawyers can give RIA services, but I'm not sure whether you can practice both together. I think you can practice only one of them. Someone has asked whether I support RIA startups. Yes, I do. You can write to me on kruti@cskruti.com for further information. Okay, so I've also got one more question for dependents of clients. So I'll again touch base that. Okay. Just give me a moment. Okay, so SEBI has given in the guidelines that dependent family members are those members whose assets are originate from the income of that single family member or a single entity. For example, if there is a earning member in the family, and that earning member has invested in the name of the other family members, but the income is from that earning member, then the other members become dependent on the earning member, and all these dependent members are to be considered as one single client. And yes, if there are any such clients, if you have clients with family members, then an annual declaration has to be given by that client for the dependent family members. Uh, can you explain what includes distribution services? So distribution services are those services where you get a commission or brokerage. What is the difference between execution and implementation service? I don't think any difference between execution and implementation service. But you cannot charge fees for implementation or execution service. Someone has asked, as per new IA regulations, IAs cannot charge fees for more than 6 months. But can we sell a 6 month service by taking the payment today and service starting from 1st June to 30th November? You can take fees in advance. So there is not much clarity on the period of service. If your agreement says that the period of service is 6 months, then there is not much thing which we can do. So I am not sure if this you can charge fees for 6 months if the service period is only 6 months. Whether you can charge in advance, there is not much guidance from SEBI on the service period. I am a ex-banker in PSU Bank with 9 years of experience and currently doing mutual fund distribution for 2.5 years. I have MBA and CFP. This experience is sufficient to apply for RIA? No, you will have need to have 5 years of experience um, before you make an application to SEBI. So you will need more 2.5 years of experience. How to structure the agreement if clients keep adding sums to assets under advice? Do we make new agreement every time? What you can do is not mention assets under advice, or in the agreement you can mention that if there is any change in the terms or in the information which is given in the agreement, then that can be either through an email, and the consent of both the parties can be taken. So if at all there is only change, and the only change is adding sums to asset under advice, then accordingly you can agree to it through a letter or a email. For a non-individual, can any CA do the audit, or there is a specific CA firm requirement? So for a non-individual, the statutory auditor has to do the client segregation audit, but the compliance of audit can be done by any CA or a practicing CS. Do you support algorithmic trading advisors? Yes, even algo trading advisors. So algo trading advisors also have to fulfill the RIA requirements. Is it compulsory to take RIA license if I provide IA service to closely held relatives and friends I do not advertise? I would still suggest that you get registered with SEBI if you are providing RIA services and charging fees. Can anybody in India provide paid implementation service? No. If that person is registered with SEBI as RIA, then you cannot charge implementation service fee. Can a client get into agreement with a company that is not his RIA for assisting in paid implementation service? So that if that company is not a associate or a relative of the RIA, then the clients of RIA can go to that company for implementation service, but you should not be getting any fees from for that client. Can I get signed NACH mandate from client for fee collection? Yes, there is no restriction on signing NACH mandate for automatic fee collection, but obviously that has to be through modes which are specified by SEBI. If I have missed any questions, please, if you can uh, mention the question again. While communicating the risk profile to customer, is it mandatory to sign that letter, and who can sign that letter? You can communicate either through email or through any report. It is not mandatory to sign that letter. But if it is signed, it's extra compliance and it is allowed by SEBI. This the someone asked for RA, that is research analyst. Also, one needs to follow this processes. No, as of now, this is only applicable to registered investment advisors. Alteration in memorandum of association of RIA corporate should be updated to SEBI. It depends on what is the alteration. If it is for name change, then yes, you will have to obviously inform SEBI, take approval from SEBI. Also, if it is about change in control, again, prior approval is required. But if it is about change in objects clause, and if you have added, a new business in your company, that need not be informed to SEBI. Can I charge 1.25 lakhs for 1 month service and will not provide any service for the 11 months? So as I told, I'm not sure how SEBI is taking this period of service thing. Um, so I have no perfect answer for your question. I'm so sorry. What is the consequence if someone is not registered as RIA and providing such services and collecting fees? So I'm sure you must have heard about the non-registered investment advisors, and there are various orders passed against non-registered investment advisors. The SEBI penalizes them, as well as you'll have to close down your business and you will not be able to provide such services for some period, say 3 or 5 years, as per the SEBI order. Can I provide sub-broking services to a client? If you are an individual, you cannot. But if you are a non-individual, you can provide sub-broking services, but you will have to follow the client segregation compliance. If there is a change in director, does prior approval require from SEBI or only communication? No need of prior approval. Prior approval is required if there is a change in control. Uh, if I have missed any question, please let me know. I'll request you to post it again. Yes, someone has asked me if I can share the PPT. Yes, I will do that. Okay, I have got a few questions. How to calculate net worth for forming partnership firm or LLP? Is the net worth of individual partners, or it's the net worth of the firm? So yes, in case of non-individuals, it is the net worth of that non-individual entity. That is, if it is a partnership firm, then the partners have to bring in the capital up to 50 lakhs, and that becomes a net worth of the partnership firm. In case of companies, of course, the definition is given, that is share capital plus free reserves minus losses or miscellaneous expenses. In case of LLP, again, partners' contribution becomes a net worth for that entity. Do I need RIA license if all my clients reside outside India? If your clients are NRIs or PIOs or have Indian passports, then you will need RIA license. But if you are servicing clients who are not Indian citizens or residing in India, um, then you don't need RIA license. What is the role of principal officer? How is it different from compliance officer? So principal officer is someone who is authorized as well as responsible for the investment advisory activities, and will be acting like a CEO or the managing director of that company. So the roles which CEO or the managing director have, that is the kind of role which the principal officer is going to fulfill. The compliance officer obviously will be looking after the compliances of the company. Someone has asked me what is the minimum criteria for conducting compliance audit. So there is all individuals as well as non-individuals have to conduct the compliance audit annually. So if you have not done for the past years, I would still suggest you do it so that you are compliant with this requirement. And also, in case of net worth, you'll have to ensure that the net worth is uh, fulfilled at all times. So in case if you have just started new as the investment advisor, and you have incurred expenses or losses, or there is no income, you will have to make sure that you maintain that net worth at all times. Can a principal officer also act as a compliance officer? In my view, no, that there are two different roles. How can you calculate AUA while charging fees 2 months in advance? So you can say that the AUA will be as on the date of the agreement or as on the date where the client is onboarded. So whatever AUA the client has at the start of the service, you can take that as base. If someone has asked, if I wish to form an LLP where the registration fee is reduced in April, does the net worth criteria also amended? No. If you are say planning to apply, yes, the fee is reduced, but the net worth requirement is for non-individuals 50 lakhs. Is it compulsory to have compliance officer for non-individuals? Yes. Who can be the compliance officer? So anyone who understands compliance in your organization can be the compliance officer. As of now, there is no requirement from SEBI as to the qualifications of the compliance officer. Can an individual hold both RIA and RA license? Yes, that is given by SEBI. So, as I told you that I have come up with this package, which is actually very, very useful for people who are just starting up with their practice, or who are just say a couple of years old in the eye industry. And this package will be very useful, as I have covered all compliances which are required under the regulation, as well as there are sample documents, there are checklists in the package, and also a sample agreement which is ready to use, which is included in the package. So the details are mentioned on my website. You can just make the payment, and I will be giving the access to the package. So if you have any queries for that, you can let me know. Is it mandatory? Okay, I've got one question. Is it mandatory to maintain a website? So SEBI has not mandated a website, but if you have, then you have to disclose the details. Can the fees charge vary each month, provided that it is within the 2.5 limit prescribed by SEBI? See, in the agreement, you must have mentioned what the fees is going to be. So, in my view, if that is mentioned in the and the fee is fixed in the agreement, then whatever is mentioned in the agreement has to be followed by you. If there are if there are no questions, then I will end the webinar. And after the webinar, you'll be getting a feedback form. So please give me your feedback. And if you can, and I will also request if you can provide a testimonial for this webinar. Okay, I've got a question. What if a client gets a lower risk profile but wants a high risk product? So I would suggest that you should not give the client the high risk product, even if you are taking declarations from the client that he is aware of his risk and the product is risky. But I would still advise you don't do it, because if there is any loss to the client, or if the client goes and complains against you to SEBI, then this disclaimers and the declarations do not help. And this is clearly evident by the fact that there are various orders against investment advisors where the risk profile is not, the risk profile process is not complied with. So it's better to let the client go rather than closing down your business. So advise and suggest that you don't take client who are not suitable to your products. Okay, so thank you all for attending my webinar. I hope that it was useful and all your queries were solved. If you still have further queries, you can always write to me at kruti@cskruti.com. Also, there, my website cskruti.com. There are various articles which are there, and I keep updating them on my website. So you are free to subscribe to my blog, and you will get the articles or the all the information in your inbox. So thank you so much, everyone. I'll just end the webinar now.